universe, the movie, or is it like a nice Chinese menu where you can grab elements from whatever you want to tell the story?
It's basically the last that you said. I mean, as we always do with all of our shows, we almost never focus directly on one specific iteration of the characters from the comics or the movies or the previous TV shows. It's always, we kind of cherry pick what we like, different aspects of different versions of the characters, and then try to, mush them all together and make a consistently interesting version that, hopefully leaves us some leeway so that we can introduce other elements, of our own into the series that haven't appeared in any other, version of the characters, and come up with like what we like to think of as like the ultimate version of that character.
So when you started the process of cherry picking, what elements did you know from the start that you really wanted to incorporate?
From the very beginning, well, the basic Hal storyline, the fact that he's, the first Green Lantern from Earth, the guy who is very dedicated to his duty as a Green Lantern, but he's also the guy who'll talk back at the Guardians and question, question their decision making sometimes. And we are also looking at the most recent version of the comics with the introduction of the Red Lanterns and all the other colored lanterns, and we thought there was actually something that we could do, something interesting we could do with those characters. So it was kind of those were the two main thrusts of what we're focused on from the comics.
I think the first thing we noticed is the animation style is completely different from what we normally do. What was the decision to move in that direction?
My boss Sam Register has been looking to get into the CG realm for a long time. He's just been looking at the different trends in animation and noticing that there's a lot more and more CG production being done for TV, and the costs have been getting a little bit more reasonable over the years, with the advances in technology, and so when this came up, knowing that the feature film had been greenlit and that was going to give us a big publicity push that would help offset some of the additional costs of going CG. He decided it was time for us to do our first all CG show, and it just all seemed to be, everything all came together at the same time.
Outside of Batman and Superman, a lot of the DC heroes don't have well-developed side personalities or alter egos, and it looks like you're pulling from the movie a little bit to flesh out Hal's personality, but how are you going to do that a bit more?
It's interesting because at the time that we were writing the first series, we actually had not had much contact with the movie people, so we weren't really influenced that much by the movie. It may seem that way in that probably the movie and us as well, is we're all kind of pulling from the same source material in the comics. It's all kind of consistent just because we're all basing it on the same source material. It's not that our movie clashes with the continuity of the movie, but it's also not that it's in perfect sync with it either. I mean, we don't, we're not being restricted to anything because of what they're doing in the movie series. So.
And I know it's focusing on the Lantern Corps, but will we see the Green Arrow appear somewhere?
Green Arrow, not necessarily. We don't really have any plans to bring the Green Arrow into the series yet. I mean, the thing about the series is that we really embrace the entire sci-fi aspect of it. So I would say 95% of the show takes place in outer space. It very rarely takes place on Earth. So it doesn't give us really much of an opportunity to bring in Green Arrow or characters like that, or like Batman or even Superman. There will be some other DC comics characters crossing over into the series, but probably not the ones you expect and not in the ways you expect.
So maybe.
Space Gabby, Atomic Knight.
Are we just going to see a concentration on Hal Jordan from episode to episode, or will we be seeing stories with Kilowog and other Corps members?
Well, Hal's in every single episode, and he is most of the focus on as the lead character. But there are some of the other supporting characters will get their own spotlight episodes throughout. Both Kilowog and some of the other guest star Green Lanterns who will show up, and this new Red Lantern character that we created for the series named Razor. He becomes kind of an important supporting character throughout the series as well, and even the new character that we created just specifically for the series, Aya, who's she starts off as the spaceship, and then she actually becomes a little bit more of a humanoid robot artificial intelligence, and so she kind of grows and evolves throughout the series as well.
We obviously the Red Lanterns in the comic were so full of rage, boiled blood, like they spit blood at these stuff.
Yeah.
You obviously can't do that in the animated feature or animated series. Now how will you make them? How can it be menacing instead of just like neon lanterns in red? You know.
They're pretty menacing. I mean, if you watch the first episode, something really horrific happens in the first, literally in the first few minutes of the series. And then by the end of the two-parter, a really, really bad thing happens at their hands. So even though we can't make them as overtly vile and disgusting as they are in the comics with the blood vomiting and stuff, they're pretty formidable villains. I think especially by children's TV standards, they're way up there.
Might we see fan favorite Dex Star?
I don't want to say yet.
All right.
Are there any confirmed villains you can talk about?
Not really.
One thing I really liked in this screener is that you showed mocking the fact that Hal is wearing the mask when he's all the way in the middle of space. And there are issues that I took with, a lot of the lanterns. All right, I can't help but mock Kyle, but everyone mocks Kyle. And then, of course, people mock John Stewart because he's the Black Green Lantern. And then, of course, we have Kyle with not Kyle, but we have, let me remember, Guy Gardner. He has, the terrible 80s haircut.
Yeah.
Never modernized. Are you going to bring more of that into the show when you bring in these other core members?
Possibly.
Well,
there will always be some element of mocking.
One of the real highlights of some of the previous DC Universe projects that you've worked on is the casting. Some of the actors that you've got just so beautifully, they marry so well to the characters. And I was so curious as far as the casting on this in terms of looking for the right actors. How difficult was it to find some of the right people for this to play some of these characters?
It was a little challenging. Hal was the toughest character to cast. It's always kind of toughest to cast your hero because you have such a kind of a concrete idea in your own head about what that person sounds like, and also you have to kind of keep in the back of your head, it's like, oh, what do people expect him to sound like? So we actually went through quite a few actors in the auditions to get to before we got to Josh, and Josh was like literally one of the last guys we listened to, and he kind of nailed it. It was funny because I wasn't really expecting it because I've worked with Josh several times before, and to me he always sounded maybe a little bit too young. I was expecting Hal to maybe sound a little bit more older, a little bit more macho. But he was, he's a really versatile voice actor, and he was able to modulate his voice to, just pitch it down just enough to give him a little bit more gravitas. But at the same time, he can do the smart alecky thing. He's got that youthful energy, but when he needs to get serious, he can really bring it. So to me, he was like perfect casting. I mean, we got really, really lucky that that he had, he auditioned for us. So.
You mentioned a couple new characters you created. Of course, you're most famous when you did with Harley Quinn. Batman Universe, she became part of the regular DC Universe. Right. First off, are you keeping up with her in the DC Universe, and what do you think? And second, do you think any of these new characters you created might reach that status and get into the DC Comics as well?
You never know. I would hope that some of the new characters that we created for the show, like Razor and Aya, hopefully will become popular enough with people and take off in a way that, that maybe DC will want to integrate them into the established continuity. But you just never know. I mean, it's all up to them. But in terms of Aya specifically, we always try to be very, very inclusive, in terms of our shows, and even though we know that the primary audience is going to be, young boys, at the same time, we don't want it to just be the all-boys show. So we wanted to have a strong female presence in the show as well, and we could have just gone with another one of the Green Lanterns. We could have, used Kat Matui or Boudica or whoever. But we were toying around with the idea of creating a new character who was at once a robot or an artificial being who not only wants to kind of become, more, not more human necessarily, but more like a living, breathing, person, and also desires to actually be a Green Lantern. So it's kind of an interesting twist on the old Pinocchio kind of idea.
So she's kind of like Natasha from Avengers.
A little bit, and a little bit like Data from Star Trek Next Generation.